Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 27th of March of 2024. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. Very interesting details are coming from Sumy area. Today the President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, visited Sumy area to inspect and to see the ongoing process of the production creating of the new defense belt. This is a primary target for the Ukrainians to understand that the Russians have a lot of plans to continue the special military operation and to capture additional territories of Ukraine. So that's why Zelensky just wants to be sure that everything is ready and everything is prepared before the further Russian offensive operation that might take place anywhere. And if you remember, during the previous videos we discussed that one of the, let's say, primary target for the Russians is to establish control of over one of the cities like Kharkiv, Zaporozhye, Odessa and Kiev. So that's why even if the Russians are going to start offensive towards Kharkiv, anyway the Russians will be forced to attack this area somewhere between Sumy and Kharkiv with the purpose to cut the main supply road, to cut the railways that goes from Sumy to Kharkiv. So this is going to be obviously one of the Russian possible targets at the first stage of the battle for Kharkiv. So that's why Zelensky visited the area to check the situation and to be sure that everything is ready to meet the Russians on this line. Furthermore, we got another interesting details, more interesting details from Kharkiv itself. On these photos we can see the results of Russian strikes, and you might say, so what is so important and interesting in the strikes? The thing is that the Russians, for the first time since the beginning of the special military operation, start bombing and attacking Kharkiv with FABs. They used to attack Kharkiv with missiles, they used to attack Kharkiv with Granny, and obviously they will continue doing this. But today, on the 27th of March, Kharkiv was bombed by the guided bombs. If you remember, just yesterday we discussed the Russian attack and the Russian bombing in the vicinity of the village by the name of Dergachi. We have a certain video showing us the results of the strike, and that was the farthest area of attack from the Russian side. And today the Russians broke their own record and they attacked Kharkiv itself, so basically the city itself. And this is very important because now the Russians will first of all save missiles, they will save the weapon, Gerain drones, and they will use them, let's say, for other directions. And from now on the Russians are going to bomb Kharkiv with bombs. Before, a few days ago, the Russians first of all cut off Kharkiv from the energy and electricity support, forcing the majority of the population to leave the town, and now they start bombing the town with FABs. So I see that more and more chances, more and more things are telling us that very likely the Russians are about to launch the ground operation in the area of the city. Now we're moving to the Kupiansk direction. We haven't received anything from the northern part. We haven't received anything from the southern part. Just few videos and few geolocations of results of Russian strikes, let's say in Lyman. This is the result of the work of Russian FAB in the area. In the vicinity of the Izium, we got also some, let's say, the results of strikes of Shahed, of Gerain drones. So the Russians are able to get very far from the line of combat contact. So nothing special on this line. And more details are coming from Siversk direction. After a very short operational pause, the Russians renewed the clashes in the area. They renewed the clearing operation. In the previous video we have already discussed the Russian FPV drone strikes in the area around the landfill, with FPV drone strikes to the north, to the south, and the Russian road control to the west of Vuhledar. And today, during the day, we got additional videos of the Russian bombing and attacking the Ukraine positions in the fields between Vuhledar to the south towards the Russian positions, and these are the positions of 81st and 54th mechanized brigades. So the Russians are very serious. They're not going to give up, as we can see. This is the vital question for them. The Russians are losing timings. They need to finish Vuhledar. Maybe they have 1, 2, 3 weeks, because the Russians are increasing the pressure on the southern part from Avdiivka towards Siversk. So this is like the most problematic area. Very interesting video we got from Siversk itself. For example, on this video we see the Russian FPV drone strike inside of the town, very far from the line of combat contact, and as a result of just the attack of regular FPV drone, the Russians managed to discover and to damage or even destroy Ukraine positions. If we will calculate the distance between from this area towards, let's say, the Russian positions in Zolotarivka, the distance is more than 11 kilometers. So without any resistance, without any problems, the Russians bypassed the area and attacked some positions in Siversk, which confirms complete absence of Ukrainian electronic warfare positions in this area. Another howitzer was destroyed also in the area of Siversk as a result of counter-artillery duels. So Siversk, Kharkiv, we have a lot of big chances that the Russians are going to start. Furthermore, we got more videos along the railways. The Russians continue storming the territory with attacking the territory with FPV drones. On this video, we can see another additional combination of videos of FPV drone strikes along the railways, so it's on Ukrainian positions. The Russians are trying to clear the area before further operation on the ground. And another batch of the videos we received on the line between Fyodorovka and Razdolovka. Few more FPV drone strikes against the Ukrainian positions in the area. So obviously Siversk is going to be the next target of the armed force of Russian Federation. To understand the picture better, it's better to increase the numbers of updates, which will confirm and show us the entire situation. And currently Siversk is the hottest and heaviest position, is the most difficult area for the Ukrainians as well as for the Russians. We haven't received anything from Chasiv Yar direction. The updates we just reported in the previous video. The Russians attacked the Ukrainian command center in Chasiv Yar as a result of Iskander strike. Another NATO office was destroyed with, according to information we have, with the Polish brigadier general. And this is obviously very important for the Russians. Now we are moving to Avdiivka direction. The Russians continue advancing. We have more updates from Berdichi itself. As we remember, during the previous waves of attacks, the Russians managed to establish control over the village by the name of Toninka, Orlovka. And today we got more details of Russian attacks in the northwestern part of the village. And as a result of attack, we have more geolocations confirming additional Russian advances in progress. So for now, the Russians control around 80% of the village. They managed to capture additional streets, and it's about the, let's say, total control. But when talking about other interesting things, the Russians established control probably over every single building, every single street, every single square meter on the Russian side of Durno River. So the Ukrainians still have control on the Ukrainian side of the Durno River. So Berdichi is about to fall probably in a day or in a two. The Ukrainians will be forced to fall back. Furthermore, as we discussed, the Russians continue to pressure in Semyonovka to the west and to the north, but without any progress, without any reports about additional progress from the Russian side. We have more updates from Novomykhailivka. The Russians continue the pressure. Today we see the videos of demining process, so the Russians are preparing the foothold around Novomykhailivka for further offensive operation with significant number of armored vehicles, tanks, and many other different types of weapons. On this video, we can see the Russians who were clearing the area to ease and to reduce the risks of further offensive and further attacks. And we got another video from the southern part. On this video, for example, we can see how the Ukrainians were trying to repel the Russian attack. We see significant number of Russian armored vehicles also attacking the Ukrainians from the farms and the barracks on the south towards the central part. The Ukrainians were counterattacking the Russians with the munition cluster rounds. Probably the Ukrainians managed to repel the Russian attack, but anyway, we see that certain activity, and during the previous few days we see that the Russians are intensifying their actions in this area. We start receiving more updates from Vuhledar direction. The Russians start bombing and attacking this area with FPV drones. During the previous weeks we have more or less few let's say FAB strikes, and now we see FPV drone strikes, which also confirms that maybe the Russians are going to make some attacks in this area just with the purpose to force the Ukrainians to return back some reinforcements to this area and to ease the Russian further progress in the area of Konstantinovka and Novomykhailivka. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions in Urozhai and Staromayorsk without any progress and any attacks on the ground. Robotin, the same story. The Russians are pushing, but without any additional progress in this area as well. We got a very interesting report from the journal Military Analytics. They are saying that according to the German publications, on the military conflict in Ukraine, either the Russians or the Ukrainians are planning to freeze the conflict, so fighting is likely to freeze. Without a pause afterwards, neither Russia nor Ukraine will have an advantage on the battlefield. The Ukrainian armed forces have no prospects of returning lost lands in 2024. On the contrary, we should expect new offensives by the Russians and losses of the territories by Ukraine. Russia is trying to break through the first line of defense of the Ukrainian armed forces in 18 places, but lines 2 and 3 are much weaker, so the risk risk of Russian moving deeper into the country is great. The West underestimated Russia's military potential. There are enough resources there to fight for several more years. Ukraine faces a critical phase until September if the West does not quickly transfer more weapons. So the most important paragraph of this report is fighting is likely to freeze, but you shouldn't expect some, let's say, Minsk agreement or peace negotiations. The thing is that, if you remember, the Russian progress in Avdiivka was mainly connected and based on the artillery rounds that Russia got from Korea. So that means that after the Russians received the Korean artillery rounds, they managed to waste them or are about to waste. So that's why the Russians need to collect and to concentrate additional few millions of rounds for another offensive operation, and as soon as they collect them, they will start a very big attack. So this is what the world tried to tell us. So according to them, now the Russians are going to make a pause and will make a short attacks like in Siversk operation without full-scale offensives, and as soon as they concentrate significant number of artillery rounds, they will make another attempt with the purpose to break completely the Ukrainian defense belt and to capture as much as possible territories. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.